All right, we are back. The Osceola Seminole Sidelines, our Monday show, 12:30 to 1 or 1:30 today, and I'm joined by Osceola managing editor Bob Ferrante and Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. And guys, welcome to the show. As we announced last week, we will be doing several of these a week. Our goal will be 3: Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, live on Osceola Facebook, Osceola Twitter, and Osceola YouTube, the Osceola YouTube channel, 12:30 to basically 1:30 every day. We depending on content, may go shorter. But today we're going to focus a little bit on recruiting. Florida State recruiting kicked off for 2023-2024 with a junior day this weekend. We also had basketball coming up this week, and Bob's going to join us to talk about that as well. But before we get started, guys, just want to pass on our thoughts and prayers to the University of Georgia football family who lost one of their players this weekend in a car accident, Devin Willock, and also lost a UGA recruiting staff member, Chandler LaCroix, having been on a staff that has experienced the death of a player. It's a hard time for those guys, that staff, everyone involved with that program, and certainly want to pass our thoughts and prayers on to Kirby Smart, the families of the Willock family, the LaCroix family, and know that our thoughts are with them. Tough way for Georgia to really start the year. They had just come off. Saturday they had the celebration of the national championship, and less than 6 hours, about 8 hours later, lost 2 family members. So I'll pass on our condolences to them. Fish, we do want to talk about recruiting, and obviously Mike Norvell and his staff kicked off really the 2023-2024 recruiting calendar with a junior day on Saturday at the Moore Athletic Center indoor practice facility, and hosted about 20 to 24 top kids in the classes of 2024 and 2025, coming off a 10-3 season. How do you think they leveraged this with the crew that came to Tallahassee this weekend?
I think it was a solid group. I wouldn't say it's elite group top to bottom, but they did get some kids in, guys that they want to have in their class, like a Charles Lester is an important prospect, corner prospect that they need corners, and he's one of the top ones in the class of 2024. Some of the other kids that we're going to talk about, but overall, it's a solid class. You'd like to get some more top end kids to come into these junior days, but it's still early in the process. I'm sure they'll have a multiple other junior days in the next weeks and coming months. So.
Yeah, they had 5 4-stars according to Rivals Network, and that was DeAndre Robinson, Charles Lester, as you've mentioned, Tarek McCant, Jonathan Daniels, and Brandon Jacob. And since you mentioned Charles Lester, we actually had the chance to talk to 4 of the guys that were in town as they exited Tallahassee. And Charles Lester, he has some very interesting things to say. You've seen the video, Fish. It seems like the kid almost wanted to commit, or certainly FSU is sitting in a very good position with Charles Lester, who is a defensive back from Sarasota Riverview. Says he always loves coming to Tallahassee, enjoys the people on the staff. Said Patrick Surtain seems to be the perfect guy to lead a group of young men on the field and off. Had not met with him. He was not on campus. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about that because he will be on campus this week with the Dolphins losing. One of the more interesting things he's had to say was obviously Marcus Woodson had been in charge of his recruiting, and Marcus obviously has left to go to Arkansas, and essentially Charles said that will have no impact on how he feels about Florida State, that he wants – it's about Florida State, not about who's recruiting him. It's about the university. He says, I've been a Seminole my whole life. He said on the 10-3 season, that's how it's supposed to be, and it's only going to get better. So he sounds like a guy that is kind of wanting to join this team. And then he did say this was his last comment: whether I end up here or somewhere else, I'll always be a Seminole in my heart. So just talk a little bit about Charles Lester's recruitment, what you think about him as a player, and where he should be on the priority list for Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the top corners in the state this year. He's a borderline 5-star kid, has good cover skills. He does get lost in coverage at times, so you will see him with the way that they do this pattern reading defenses in college and learning how to play certain zones. He's going to have to learn some of the techniques and stuff to fit into the style of defense that Florida State runs. But as far as if he plays straight man, he has good cover skills. He could turn his hips and flip and run. He does some of the things that you want a top-end corner to be able to do. He tackles pretty well. He does hesitate on some plays, so you want to see him be a little more instinctive. But overall, he's a very good player. He's a guy that Florida State wants and needs at a position of need.
Yeah, another big kid, another big-time recruit, obviously, DeAndre Robinson, 6'5", 290-pound defensive tackle, rated as the 4th best defensive tackle in the nation, 18th best player in the state, and the Rivals' 66th best player in the nation overall at any position from Orlando Jones High School. Listen, he had a lot of positive things to say. He said interesting comment he made was his favorite thing about meeting with the coaches one-on-one and having some interaction with them. What was that he liked that they were honest with him and said they told him what you're not going to like about playing football at Florida State. Did not sell all the bells and whistles and everything that comes along with it. Talked about the work that's involved in trying to be a major college football player. Says he talks to Odell Haggins almost daily. Doesn't have a top school right now, but obviously FSU is in that mix, along with schools like Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M, Colorado, and Miami. Plans to be back in March. Said one of the most important things that he wants to see next is how these guys work in practice and how they train in the offseason. Just talk a little bit about DeAndre's ability as a player and his importance to this class.
Yeah, I mean, this will be, if you're saying he's in March, that'll be his 3rd time on campus that I know of. He was at their summer camp last year. Now, he didn't work out. He was with the Jones group with Malik Bryant, who ended up at Miami. There was about 15 kids from Jones High School at the camp. One thing you can tell is he's a big man. One of the things we've discussed about Florida State, we feel like, I at least feel like this, and I think you probably do too, Florida State needs to get bigger and more physical up front on both sides of the ball. This kid is already ready physically to step in a college campus and be in a rotation just on his size. I'm not saying his ability, and we already know it takes time, but when you look at Tiafasi and this kid, these guys look like they belong in the SEC or they belong at Oklahoma, who they played in their bowl game. One of these bigger, more physical-looking guys that's not going to need 2 years to develop. He's not 265 pounds, and he's going to have to put on weight. He may have to lose some weight, this kid, and then rebuild that back up and get back to that same weight down the road. But physically, he looks the part. When you turn on the film, he's more of a run stuffing type defensive tackle. You don't see that super explosiveness, but he does take on blocks. He could get off blocks, get in the backfield, and be a disruptor in the run game. That's his strength. He's probably going to be a nose guard type in the FSU scheme. He's a guy that you definitely want to get. I've always said you can never have enough defensive linemen. This is a big physical kid that you want to be part of your class.
Well, another big physical kid that we got a chance to talk to was the offensive tackle prospect, Jonathan Daniels from Pensacola Pine Forest, rated the 15th best offensive tackle in the nation by Rivals, 243rd best player nationally, and the 52nd best player overall in the state. Listen, he certainly, if you listen to what he had to say after he visit, this is all about Alex Atkins. Really likes Alex Atkins. His favorite thing with, Mike told him that he was a priority in his meeting with Mike Norvell, according to Jonathan. So favorite part, he said, was the one-on-one with all the coaches, and says that he does have conversations with either Atkins or Mike Norvell on pretty much a regular basis, daily basis, maybe a day or two between calls. But they said FSU is in his top 5, and right now they stand out the most. He'll be back on March 11th. He will be visiting Georgia on January 28th. But just talk a little bit about Jonathan as a prospect, and obviously a really big kid that's got, based on what we saw, has at 6'5", 290, can still put substantial weight on his frame.
Yeah, the one thing you notice when you turn on the film with him is how athletic he is. He almost gets in when he plays on the defensive line and the offensive line. When he plays on the offensive line, he almost gets in a defensive stance. His stance is a lot wider. I think he's going to have to shorten that part of his game up, shore it up a little bit. He takes a really, really wide base when he gets in his offensive line stance. I think his technique is going to have to be worked on. But the physicality, you see, he takes guys, he drives them into the ground. He has a bit of a mean streak. He plays the offensive line like a defensive lineman. And that's not surprising considering he looks better right now on the defensive line. He's a very big, athletic guy that can move laterally. I think he can play all three positions, tackle, guard, center. He gives you some versatility in that. FSU likes to move guys around. But you look at his ability, I think he has a lot of ability to play not only on Saturdays, but a guy that could play potentially on Sundays. He's a big, physical, long, athletic lineman. You could start to see where they're going with their offensive line recruiting. You're not seeing smaller guys that they're trying to build up. This is another kid, like you said, will be 315, 320 pounds, and he won't look it because the way he's built and the way he can add weight and not look fat. I think he's a kid that has a ton of potential, and he'd be a great get and continue to improve that offensive line room. They've done that the last few years. They continue to get guys that are better than the year before. This is another guy that fits that criteria of what they're looking for.
Yeah, listen, he's smallish compared to the guys they offered last week. The 6'8", 315-pound Bennett Warren out of Texas.
But there's no doubt. But he still has the ability to get big.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's not a small guy that they're going to try to get big, and it's going to take 2 or 3 years. This is a kid, I think you get him in that weight room. You start to give him 3-4 meals a day. He starts to work on his body that he could be 315 pounds next year.
Yeah. I was just having fun with saying a 6'5", 209 guy is kind of small. But Warren Bennett may be one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen at 17 or 18 years old. I've gone back and watched his tape 2 or 3 times. All right, Fish. The other guy is probably more lightly known in the recruiting circles, but a cornerback out of South Florida, Josh Philistine. We got a chance to talk to him. Like Lester, was unbelievably high on his visit. Enjoyed his one-on-ones with all the coaches. They had a chance to meet with Mike and with Adam Fuller. He's already talked to Sir Stan, so he's had some communication with FSU's new defensive back coach. But another guy, grew up an FSU fan. He's got offers from a list of schools that includes Miami, Penn State, Ole Miss, among others. When asked whether an offer, he does not have an offer for Florida State, which made him kind of an outlier in this group. Most of these kids do. He said, when about the visit, did it meet all expectations? He said, yes, it was like a dream come true. And he really got a big kick, he said, out of Florida, growing up a Florida State fan, the fact that Mike Norvell was the guy that picked him up in the golf cart to give him a ride around campus. So just your thoughts on Josh as a player, and whether do you think this invite to the junior day means a offer could be, coming quickly for him?
Yeah, turning on the film, watching him, I think he's one of these guys. They got a big recruiting board as far as DBs. They need a lot of them, but I think right now it's more of I think this is a kid that they're going to try to see what he does this spring, maybe come to their summer camp. He's probably one of those offered to the summer camps and see if he continues to get better. He's a quality player. I think they have some guys more higher up on the board. The one thing that's common theme with these defensive backs, they are versatile enough that they can play more than one position. They're not just stuck playing a safety spot, and that's the only safety spot they could play in the defensive backfield altogether. He gives them some versatility in that he could play corner, maybe play some in the slot, and also play more of a strong safety. But that's going to be something that, like I said, they see him this spring, how well he continues to improve, see if something in the summertime. And if a few of the guys above him start to fall off the board, do they take him just as more of a depth piece right now that could be developed down the road? He's a quality player. I'm not sure if he's in that top group, but that's up to them.
Yeah, and of course, they started the weekend actually on Friday. They actually did get Travaris Banks, a cornerback out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He was in Tallahassee on Friday. Then I believe Tennessee or Georgia on Saturday. Just your thoughts on Travaris as a player. I think we've both watched film. It's probably been a while ago for both of us, but he's an impressive player out of Tuscaloosa. Just your thoughts on the importance of getting him out of for an unofficial out of Tuscaloosa.
I mean, anytime you could get these kids a visit from that area, it's a great thing. But as you know, as well as we found out last year with the defensive lineman that ended up at Auburn, the fall kid, that these are guys that you're going to have to kind of recruit under the radar, try to not get too much attention. Hopefully it stays under the radar. And as they recruit him, if he does decide to come to Florida State, that they're able to basically slide him in till National Signing Day and he commits when nobody expects it. But these are type of guys you kind of don't want them to commit early or show too much interest because that puts the screws get tightened by those local schools. So it'll be interesting. I mean, he's from Alabama. It's always a tough pull to pull a kid like that out of that state.
Yeah, two more four-star kids for 2024 that were on campus. Tarek McCants from Tampa Wharton, 5'9", 180 pounds, 22nd best athlete in the 2024 class, 212th nationally as far as overall player. And then you had Brandon Jacob, the safety from Orlando Evans High School, 18th best safety prospect in the nation, 234th overall. Just talk about those guys and where they fit into this class and where you think Florida State is with them now.
Yeah, I think offensive, the safety spot, FSU needs to improve that. They lost, a few guys the last couple of years before they even got a chance to really get on the field. He'll be an important piece in their recruitment. They need safeties. He's a bigger, longer, athletic type of guy. You can move him around. You can bring him up into the box and almost use him as an extra linebacker. The McCants kid, like you said, more of an athlete. It's basically you get him on campus, and if you recruit a kid like that, find out where he's going to fit once he's on campus, because those guys, you can never have enough of those guys too, those athletes that can play multiple positions. So he's one of those, hey, we're going to recruit him. We're not going to really worry about where we're going to put him right now. We'll wait till he's on campus and figure it out then.
Yeah, they also had two Tallahassee kids from Florida High, Ashton Hampton and Micaiah Danzy, the running back, both 2024 kids. I know you're high on Danzy. Just talk a little bit about, and listen, I will say this. One of the prospects talked about the distance from home, Tallahassee. Now, he's not a Tallahassee kid, but he said he's from Orlando, and he said, well, it's not too far, it's not too close. So I do think that's a real deal when you're recruiting guys from their hometown. But just talk a little bit about Danzy and Hampton.
Yeah, the one thing is, and Jerry got to see Danzy with me in the state title game. Super fast. He played some running back. The only thing when he was playing running back, he did try to bounce everything outside. When he did run it in the middle, he wasn't very decisive. Like he almost didn't want to run to the middle of the field inside in between the tackles. Like I kind of compared him to Lavernius Coles, who was a running back in high school, ended up a top-end receiver at Florida State before he got in some issues off the field. I think this kid's kind of like that, Danzy. He's a guy that you want to get him the ball. He's very explosive. I don't know what he runs in track, but you could tell this is a track kid. He's explosive. Once he gets into the open, he could take it the distance anywhere on the field. They don't have a whole lot of these guys, and most teams don't. When you get one of these guys that is super explosive and fast, you want to get them because that type of speed can flip the field. You saw with Kermit Whitfield in this national championship game, guys that can win games on special teams. When was the last time they had a return in the punt game or the return game, the kickoff return game? This guy gives them the ability to make those top end plays in that position. I think he's a receiver. He's super explosive. I'm really high on him after watching him in the state championship game. The Hampton kid, another guy, we talk about it over and over. The one theme with a lot of these guys, they're athletes. They're not just pigeonholed into one position. He could play wide receiver. He could play defensive back, maybe grow into a linebacker with the way the game's played now. Hampton's father did coach at Florida State. I don't know how much of an impact that will have on him deciding on Florida State since he's no longer on the staff. You never know how those things are. But Hampton's a quality player. I don't think he's as high up on the board as a Danzy, just because Danzy's explosiveness and what he could do. But he's a very good player, very quality player that could play multiple positions, and he would not be a bad take if they decide to take him in their class.
Well, Bob, I do want to ask you, you obviously were playing, covering the basketball team this weekend while we were over at the Moore Center, and you had a much warmer climate than we did because it was cold out there.
Just a bit.
But do you remember, listen, they had 5 4-stars. It was a junior, kind of I don't want to call it invite only because it wasn't invite only, but it was kind of more specialized. It was a small group of kids that showed up. Do you see, just at face value, do you see any improvement in the type of kid they're getting on campus coming off the 10-3 season?
I think so, without a doubt. I mean, part of it is just you've got the ability to host recruits and build these relationships early on. Like Fish was saying, you want to get these guys on campus a couple times, 2 or 3 times, going into March, and as they start evaluating their decisions, these relationships have been built, not just by text or by playing, PS5 with a coach, but it's in person. You've had that face-to-face time. I think watching a lot of these interviews and reading the stories that you guys have written, everybody has mentioned that face-to-face one-on-one time with a coach like Mike Norvell, the offensive lineman with Alex Atkins. Clearly, these guys connect really well with technology, but a lot better face-to-face. So I think just the quality of these classes, I mean, we'll see. But I think Florida State, you guys might agree, is already well ahead on this 2024 class in January of 23 compared to where they were a year ago with the 23 class. It's just that time that they've had to build these relationships.
Yeah, and of course, it will likely, we know it's not going to be the last junior day. We are expecting them to host one officially on the 28th, and I would not be surprised at all if there are kids in town this upcoming weekend, even though there's no home basketball game to tie a big junior day to, but there certainly will be on January 28th. Some of the other news coming out of the weekend was obviously Patrick Surtain was with the Dolphins. They have now been eliminated from the NFL playoffs after losing to the Bills, so he is expected to be on campus within days, if not hours. I'd ask both of you, how important it is to get him on campus sooner rather than later from a recruiting standpoint. And then, of course, is there any validity into him getting in here and building relationships with his current players before spring practice starts? So, Bob, I'll start with you, particularly on, getting him here and getting him, acclimated to the staff and to his room.
Yeah, as a longtime Dolphin fan, I was kind of cheering for my boys on Sunday, but, for Florida State fans, you want to get Patrick Surtain in Tallahassee and getting a chance to get to know a lot of these guys. Like Deuce Cypress is just getting immersed into what they want to do in Tallahassee in the off season. It's good to have that time in the office with these guys, and I think this is an important time as we're talking about who might be visiting on the 21st, the 28th. Like you mentioned, there is a basketball game. We'll expect a lot of visitors that day. These are great opportunities to build relationships. And, again, going back to the interviews you guys had on Saturday, a lot of these prospects were pretty close to Marcus Woodson, but they've had to kind of separate that relationship. Yes, they like and respect Marcus Woodson, but now he's at Arkansas. He's at a different school. Now it's about building that relationship further with Patrick Surtain. So that process has to start, and it should start, if not today, pretty soon.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear a couple of the kids saying that they like Florida State for Florida State, and the stats will back for prospects across the board. The stats will always back up that more than 60% of the guys that sign a college scholarship will play for more than one head coach, let alone an assistant coach. So, yeah, you really need to choose a program that fits you best academically, athletically, and socially. Of course, now you throw the NIL into all that, but there's 4 buckets that you need to fill if you're a high school prospect, in my opinion, and not so much who is recruiting you, although we all know that plays a huge part in it. But, Fish, the importance of getting Coach Surtain into Tallahassee and how he can help them with these junior days as they get ready to go into a dead period after the first Wednesday of February.
Yeah, I mean, it can only help. You need to get these kids, as many of them on campus, like I said, before this dead period comes in, because you don't know if you'll get them back on campus again. There's a lot of stuff going on as far as 7-on-7s. The 7-on-7 circuit is starting up this week. So a lot of these guys are going to be busy doing other things. So you want to get them while they're not distracted. They're not playing. They're not in off-season really workouts right now with their teams. They're not doing spring football. This is a one opportunity, and probably one of the last, that you really get a chance to get one of these kids on campus until the summer camps. You'll get guys that come through once in a while with their coaches or high school coaches for spring ball because they're coming up for the coaching clinic or whatever. But you don't get a lot of more opportunities before that summertime. So you want to get them on campus one more last time, let it be fresh in their memory that it's not something that happened a year ago or 2 years ago that they're on campus. It's now that they've had that success on the field, they could get, I'm sure the vibe even around that program, it's a lot easier to sell now that they are winning, and it's a lot more positive around that program.
Yes, winning does. We've talked about this multiple. We talk about every time we talk recruiting. It's the biggest seller you have. But bigger than the head coach, bigger than the alternative uniforms, and everything else that goes along with it. Fish, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for taking the time out. Of course, Fish has his weekend recruiting wrap up. You can go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. But he just published that 2 hours ago. So he kind of gives you some more insight of his insight to this past weekend, and really does a great job of breaking down just about every player that was in town, and also talks about some other players that were on FSU or that are on FSU's radar for the 24 and 25 classes. Kurt Weiler has an article on DeAndre Robinson's visit, as well as Charles Lester, and we will have an article on Jonathan Daniels coming out shortly from Bob, and then I will have something on Josh Philistine later today. And also we have our photo gallery from the weekend on our premium recruiting board. So if you have any questions on what happened this weekend in Tallahassee, please go to floridastate.rivals.com, and you will get the latest news, not only in the form of articles, but also our message board thread from this past weekend. But Fish, we will certainly be back in touch later in the week. And as always, we all can't wait to either get a new background or actually learn how to play a piano. But we got to get you a better screensaver.
All right, man.
All right, Fish. All right. Well, Bob, thanks for being patient with us. And, of course, there's still a lot going on. The spring sports are the fall spring sports are right in the middle of their crunch time with FSU basketball getting ready to go to Notre Dame, men's basketball on Tuesday. Obviously, women played yesterday in a close game with Louisville, which was really a fun game to watch. But they'll head to UVA on Thursday with a 16-4 record, and still one of the better basketball teams in the ACC, if not the country. Just some updates on basketball, and obviously I know everyone wants to know how Baba's throat is doing. He's got tonsillitis, and so I know there's been a lot of fanfare about that because they don't know when they're getting him back.
Yeah, we'll do the quick one with Baba. Baba's battling tonsillitis, and I would say he's firmly in that questionable camp for Tuesday's game at Notre Dame. I did see him walk into the arena on Sunday to watch the women's game with some of the men's basketball players. So it's not like he's quarantined in a dorm room or something now. He's just battling tonsillitis. So will he be able to make the trip? Will he be able to play? To be determined. I think this might be a storyline that we'll have to follow for a couple games, maybe even a couple weeks. Hey, on the women's side, if you have not watched this women's basketball team, they are super fun. It's a pace and space offense that I can only best describe as it's stealing a lot from men's basketball in terms of the roots. It's very up-tempo, drive to the rim. If it's not there, kick it out for a three. You can always draw the foul at the rim too, of course. But they score 90 points on the regular. A really big weekend, really, when you look at it. They beat NC State, the number 11 team in the country, on Thursday night, and they were up 6 in that final quarter against Louisville before, Morgan Jones, an old friend of the program, but now at Louisville, and Haley Van Lith put them away in that final quarter. So some of those negatives, the rebounding went against Florida State. The officiating in women's basketball remains very, very poor and somewhat inconsistent. But even if you set some of those issues aside, I think Florida State had a real chance to win 2 there. And they'll probably say that they're frustrated. But a split in these 2 big games, I think, for the women's basketball team is really big. We didn't expect this program to go 16-4 through their first 20. I think that's a real positive for them as they kind of go deeper into this ACC play.
Yeah, it's been fun to follow. I've listened to Ari on the radio sometimes because he calls the games, and then call a little bit on television when I was speaking about officiating and watching some of the worst officiating in the history of the world yesterday in NFL games, and really all the last 2 weeks. NFL's got a problem on their hands when it comes to officiating. I think pretty much any level of officiating has a problem. And listen, it's a hard. I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but it's a hard job. I get that, but golly, there was some really bad calls in the NFL this past weekend. Well, Bob, obviously we're getting close to the ball and stick sports. We do know that Florida State baseball has broken out into small group practice, throwing sessions, batting cage sessions. But just talk to us a little bit about the timeline. As this is probably as far as anticipation of a baseball season with Link being back, I cannot believe. I mean, probably maybe the anticipation as big as Mike's last year. I mean, maybe not quite that big, but I mean, a lot of buzz around baseball, a lot of excitement with Link being back. He's come in and made some changes to the facility. They've redone the field, parts of the field. But anyway, just a little bit of baseball, which will not kickoff, but first pitch February 17th.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we're a month away, and if you have not seen Dick Howser Stadium since last May or June, I mean, Pat, Kurt, and I have gotten to go out and cover football practice. When you're standing on that concourse down the third baseline, you're constantly looking behind you to see all the improvements at Dick Howser Stadium. So you will see a field to be proud of, really. And I think a field that is very much the way Link Jarrett wants to be operated, with true bounces for the infielders, with true hops for the catcher on those kind of quick hops right near the home plate. It could make Florida State a better infield fielding team if that makes sense. You'll see some more consistent hops. I think this could be a really good pitching staff too. I mean, you've got Carson Montgomery and Jackson Bowmeister from the right-hand side. From the left-hand side, Wyatt Kroll. This could be a very fun team. The expectations will be very high because at Florida State, you're always thinking, is this a team that can make it to Omaha? That might be way too optimistic for this year as you're kind of rebuilding a roster in year one. But historically, Link's teams are incredibly good fundamentally. He runs a very tight, efficient practice. We've seen the practices change dramatically. You get a lot out of it just watching those guys. And they're moving fast for a baseball practice that typically is a little bit slower paced and relaxed. So I think there are high expectations just to see how this team kind of runs into the schedule. An early series at TCU, and I haven't kept up with the rankings to even tell you where TCU is ranked.
Usually pretty good.
Usually pretty good, and they played last year. So Florida State's got a schedule that's going to be pretty tough between the ACC, playing Florida, both Tallahassee, Gainesville, and Jacksonville, TCU. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be fun to kind of see the first steps under Link Jarrett.
Yeah, and then and Bob, if the answer is I don't know, I'm fine with that. But just how does you think the roster he's taking over compares to the one he left behind at Notre Dame? More talented. I mean, you'd almost have to think it's more talented because of where you're recruiting from. But yeah, I just didn't know whether you had any opinion on that. And then, of course, quicker than the baseball team getting started, we will have the FSU women's softball team getting started on February 9th. And, of course, listen, they have been probably if you not counted basketball this season, they've probably been the most consistent and biggest winner on campus for several years now. Just talk about the expectations for this particular softball team. And it has a lot of talent coming back and has brought in some new talent.
Yeah, I think, Kat Sandercock, the right-handed pitcher, is the ace of the staff, but they've surrounded her with a ton of talent. I think we could see almost every position relatively settled, infield, outfield. Of course, everybody looking down to third base. And that's the toughest position, maybe in the sport outside of the pitcher. But who will be I hate using the term shoes to fill because that's not an appropriate way to view replacing or finding the next somebody. But But when you lose a Sydney Sherrill, the top defensive player in the conference and an All-American, there's always going to be that, well, who's next? And can she be, what can she do? What can't she do? Look, Lonnie Alameda recruits at a high level. She's got some great transfer prospects too. I know she's got a catcher from Texas A&M who, they're expecting a lot of things from too. So that's something that I think is, again, very exciting to watch, is how the pieces come together. Not as many questions over there compared to baseball, quite honestly. I think you were kind of asking what's the difference between Notre Dame in 2022 and Florida State this year. Well, obviously the Fighting Irish had a really veteran baseball team, and they went to Omaha. I don't think this isn't as veteran in terms of 4th and 5th year guys coming out of COVID. They were up in South Bend last year. So my questions would be, who does Link look to for leadership? Who are the guys who are going to set the tone? Are the pitchers going to be consistent, throughout that weekend rotation just to really set a tone for everybody on the staff? So I probably have much more baseball questions just as we kind of see things unfold in softball. But it's a good time of year, because once you get into February, you got all these overlapping sports. There's always something going on. So that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, and listen, I'm looking forward to getting out to the baseball team and the softball stadium, because I think it's going to be a really fun spring for Florida State. And of course, you got golf and all some of the other sports that will be going on. Anything else update, Bob, outside of basketball, baseball?
Yeah, something I came across earlier today is when you're watching the playoff game, Bucks and Cowboys tonight, you may see Xavier Rhodes, who was just recently picked up by the Cowboys, and was just, the coaches are excited about what he might be able to offer. And it sounds crazy to see a guy maybe get on the field less than 10 days after being signed, but Xavier Rhodes might play tonight. So that could be a cool little storyline for the Cowboys as they try to pull off an upset down in Tampa.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this game ends in a tie and they're both somehow eliminated by the NFL. There's just too much trauma down in Tampa, and Jerry Jones just ruins the Cowboys for me. So this is a game that if they ever could finish in a tie, I wish it would. But yeah, that would be. I did not know you'd gotten picked up, so that gives me a reason to cheer for the Cowboys, I guess, because I don't know. Is there any Florida State people on Tampa Bay right now?
They may have a practice squad guy, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty limited. And honestly, the Eagles, who had the bye, have probably the most Florida State guys. So we'll see them in action coming up over the weekend. Well,
and Graham Gano helped Dalvin Cook pack his bags early yesterday. So we got to see some Seminole games, but that was a good game. Listen, these playoff games have been unbelievable. We saw Asante Samuel pick off 3 passes against Trevor Lawrence. If you told me that he would have picked up 3 passes and a half and he would not be going on to the next round, that was an incredible game. And I've become a classic Jags fan, I think. We hear so much about him being in Tallahassee. But, yeah, so it should be a fun game tonight. Well, Bob, I know we got a lot going on this weekend, this week. I want to thank you for joining us. And, again, if you are watching us on the Osceola Facebook channel, YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Osceola Twitter page, and you're not a subscriber, please go to floridastate.rivals.com. We do have free content on there. Obviously, our Osceola YouTube channels, all our video content, that can be accessed for free. But really, I hope that you will go to floridastate.rivals.com and give us a look, see our articles. We got women's basketball, men's basketball, or football all covered right now, all my articles on the main page. And like I said, a photo gallery from FSU's Junior Day on January 14th, this past Saturday. But I want to thank Bob. I want to thank Fish for joining me as always. We will be back at 12:30 on Wednesday. We'll probably be more basketball heavy, and we'll probably be Aria and Bob and Jerry. And I may join them if there's some new football news coming out, or they need novice basketball opinion. It's been a long time. Yeah. So I'm more than happy to give an opinion, even when it doesn't matter. But anyway, please visit floridastate.rivals.com. We will be back at 12:30 on Wednesday, and thanks for joining us again on another off-season version of Seminole Sidelines, brought to you by theosceola.com, the rival site for Florida State, floridastate.rivals.com. We'll see you soon. Thanks.